Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us for our panel this evening. You're Never Alone in Friartown, Our Culture of Care. This webinar is being recorded and you will have access to it once it is made public at a later date. My name is Dr. Rosemary Mugan, and I'm an alumnus of Providence College. Currently, I'm the director of the Personal Counseling Center here on campus. We'll all share more about what we do here on campus within our departments, and I'll specifically speak about the Counseling Center a little later on, including how it operates and what role it has within the care team. But before we begin our panel discussion, I would like to first turn things over to Dean Stephen Sears, Vice President of Student Affairs and Dean of Students, to provide some opening thoughts about our topic for this evening on our dedication to the health and wellness of our students. Dean Sears?
Thank you, Rosemary. Good evening, everyone. So excited to have you here this evening, and want to thank you for taking the time and your busy lives to spend it with us. We're really excited to spend some time with you and also share some of the resources and the things that are happening here in Friartown. And more particularly, I want to thank you. Thank you for entrusting us with the greatest gifts that God has provided, that is your children. We're 5 weeks into the semester and there's so much happening. We're watching our friars and, being involved and engaging in many different ways on campus. But we're also well aware that other students may be struggling with classes, struggling with making friends, struggling being away from home. And part of this session, you'll hear about many of the resources that we have in place. And you'll really get a sense of how much we care, because we do. We lead our division and everything that we do at Providence College with compassion, with empathy, with care and support. As a parent, I have to say, and as a parent of a friar, I have to say it's really important to me for your children and us, for your children to have a good experience, to know that they're cared for and that they're loved. And that's part of our goals here at in Friartown. And we share your thoughts, your understandings, and what you hope to see in your children and what they get out of their experience here. But we also know that some students need a little bit of help in different ways, whether that be through personal counseling, whether that be developing a friendship with an administrator or a staff member. We have found through our time and working with our student body, and more particularly with their families, that sometimes students just need someone to go to, someone who cares about them. And what I can promise you here is that the people that are on this panel and the people that work for them and with them do care. And we really care about every individual here at Providence College, that they feel like they belong and they're part of something bigger than just themselves. So in a moment, you're going to hear about the CARE team, our campus assessment, response and evaluation team, which has a various number of faculty and our staff, more particularly our staff that engage with our students on a daily basis. And it's a pretty exciting program that we have in place to support our students that may be dealing with different stresses and anxiety. And you'll learn a little bit more about who you need to contact, who your students should be in touch with in the event they're dealing with any anxiety, stress, they have questions. The biggest thing that we thrive on is you're never alone in Friartown. And from this event tonight, we hope those answers and you see from what we say that every student on this campus are never alone in Friartown. I'll be stepping out shortly to go to another event, but I'm really excited that you're here. I'm hopeful that I get to see many of you this weekend with your sons and daughters, and go Friars. And now I turn it back over to Rosemary Mugan. Thank you, Rosemary.
Thanks so much, Dean Sears. So we will start with having each of our panelists introduce themselves, talk to you about what office they represent and what those offices are responsible for, including discussing their particular roles on our campus care team. We'll then move to some commonly asked questions we have all come up with from parents that have asked them in the past, students and others over the years related to student health and wellness concerns. As your own questions may arise, please do feel welcome to put them into the Q&A, and we will get to as many of those as we can during this webinar. First on our panel is Dean Tiffany Gaffney, Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs and Associate Dean of Students. Dean Gaffney.
Thank you, Dr. Mugan. Welcome to You're Never Alone in Friartown. Just really excited to spend this evening with you all and talk about, some of the work that we do and the ways in which we support students. So as Dr. Mugan said, I'm in the Dean of Students office. I've been at Providence College for 18 years as a staff member in student affairs, working first in residence life and then moving to the Dean of Students office. But before that, I was also a student here. So I have both my bachelor's and master's from Providence. And I know and believe it's a special place, but it's the people and the community at Providence College that makes it so special. And so just really excited to talk about the ways in which we can support your students. Not joining us tonight is Father Bulger. Father Justin Bulger is our chaplain. He is actually at the event that Dean Sears needs to leave us to attend. Father Bulger wishes he could be here. He wishes he could be in two places, but his priority is always supporting our students first. And so that's where he is right now. But we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Father Bulger and the integral role really that the chaplain's office, Father Bulger and his staff play in the network of support and resources available to students. So I hope in another opportunity this weekend that you will have to meet Father Bulger and his staff. But next I'd like to introduce one of my favorite people on campus, Dean Nedzer Erlis. He and I are classmates. We graduated together. We have a healthy competition, but he is Assistant Dean and Director of Residence Life. So Ned.
Thank you, Dean Gaffney. Yes, it is true. Tiffany and I both graduated the same class year. The year I like to affectionately refer to as the last great class year at Providence College. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening as well. I share the sentiments of my colleagues on the panel, and I serve the college as the Assistant Dean and Director of Residence Life and Housing. And really my role is to help support our 3,200 students that live in our residence halls through our care network, right? And so I work with and supervise, manage our complex directors, our hall directors, our resident assistants, right, who are student leaders that live in the halls. And we are always working together to try to find ways to connect students to the appropriate resources to support them in their success here at the college. So I'm very much looking forward to engaging any questions you might have. And I'll pass it now to Dr. Brian Marinelli.
Thank you, Ned. I just want to reiterate the warm welcome that everyone has given. Welcome to you all. Welcome to this panel. It's my pleasure to be here this evening and spend some time with you. As Dr. Mugan said at the outset, my name is Brian Marinelli, and I oversee the college's new Student Success Center, which opened its doors on the second floor of the library this fall. And just in case you're wondering what the Student Success Center is, the idea for it emerged after the college went to a school-based model of organization. At that point, each school had a dean, and so the need for the centralized dean's office that we once had came into question. And about 3 years ago, a task force finally recommended that the dean's office be dissolved and its various functions should be reassigned. So over the past year, I have spent the bulk of my time helping to figure that out. That is, which functions really belong to the schools, which advising functions, and which advising functions should be centralized in the Student Success Center. So what is the Success Center? It is the hub of academic advising for undeclared students, as well as students from select majors where we had some pretty heavy advising needs. Majors like biology and psychology. Having professional advisors in the Success Center is allowing the faculty in those departments to spend a little bit more time with the upperclassmen, and the first and second year students can get some introductory advising from our advisors. So it's better quality advising all around as a result of that, because students are getting more quality time with their advisors. The advisors in the Student Success Center also do academic monitoring of students. So, for example, when midterm grades are posted, we take a close look at those. And if there are any students who seem like they could benefit from outreach and support, we would reach out to them. And the advisors in the center are available for a number of other reasons. They're there to help students navigate academic challenges, explore different program options, connect with high impact learning experiences like research opportunities and internships. And they're also there to help students chart a new course if their professional goals change. So there's a lot to offer there on the advising side. And the Success Center is also the hub of academic support services for students. And so we offer a number of services, including academic skills coaching, where students can meet one-on-one with professional staff and work on developing general or subject-specific study strategies. They can work on time management and get coaching in that area, which is a big adjustment for a lot of first-year students. The staff in this area also offer workshops on a variety of topics, including time management, active reading, effective study, and procrastination and how to overcome it. We also have a tutoring center that offers free one-on-one appointments with peer tutors. And tutoring is offered in most subject areas, especially across the core curriculum. And a lot of first and second year students are enrolled in those classes, and we see a lot of first year and second year students. Our tutors are really well trained. They're among the most accomplished students at PC, and so they're very well equipped to help your students if they find themselves struggling in a class, or even if they just want to come in and review material for an exam. They say the best way to learn material is to teach it to somebody else, and tutors are happy to kind of sit and listen to students talk about what they know and then help them tweak things if there are any misconceptions. We also have a writing center, which operates very much the same way as the tutoring center. Students get free one-on-one appointments. The tutors there are also very well trained to engage students in the learning process and also to preserve students' ownership of their work. That's really important. And so students come in to use the writing center can expect to engage in a conversation around their work, not to simply have it edited. So all of those services are available to any student at any level, whether you have a first-year student who's adjusting to college or a senior who's working on a capstone project. There's certainly no harm in going to the writing center and having a tutor look at a draft and give some feedback for improvement. And then last, I'll mention just the specialized support services that we have for certain populations. So our staff includes an ESL specialist who can provide support for reading, writing, and oral communication for non-native English speakers. We also have our accessibility or disability services area, which coordinates academic accommodations for students with documented disabilities. And this includes, I want to make a special mention, accommodations for students who may be experiencing mental health problems. And so if your student has a documented mental health issue and might benefit from academic accommodations, I encourage you to put your student in touch with us. The Student Success Center also includes our multicultural student success area, which is focused on the academic and personal success of our multicultural students at the college. And we have a wonderful staff there. They do incredible work. And we also have a student athlete services unit, which is focusing on helping student athletes balance their academic and athletic commitments. We have a quiet monitored study space for those students to provide some structure. And by the way, all students are welcome to use that space. So if your student is struggling to find structure and needs a quiet kind of monitored space, that space is open to them as well. So that's just an overview of the Student Success Center services from about 10,000 feet. I am also on the care team, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. And my job really is to serve as a liaison between the academic support providers and the care team members, and to give the care team a sense of whether or not students out of classroom struggles may be having an impact on their academic performance. That's my role. I'm going to turn things back over to Rosemary.
Thanks so much, Brian. And I did not know that Tiffany and Ned were in the same year, so I learned something new tonight. My role and the Counseling Center's role on campus, we are the office, the department, if you will, where our mission essentially is to provide really empathic, quality, inclusive services from a mental health treatment standpoint for our student body. And particularly ongoing for our undergraduate students. We are a multidisciplinary staff of psychologists, of social workers, of licensed mental health counselors. And we have a small training program where we have students who are getting their doctorate or their master's in social work at other institutions are well advanced in their study and need a year doing the clinical work, and they're closely supervised by us and have been bringing just such a wonderful breadth of experience and opportunity for our students to be able to work with those individuals that have come through our doors over the several years. Since 2011, actually, we started that training program. We are unique in compared to so many other college counseling centers, and feel very blessed to say that the college permits us to be able to do ongoing work with our students. We do not have session limits. We're able to see a student off and on, if that's their choosing, over the course of 4 years while your students are with us. And that allows us to do some really solid work with those who may want to engage in mental health treatment throughout the course of their time. We typically see students every other week, but some may be weekly for a spell of time based on what's going on for them. So I say that to let you know that there really is no one size fits all. It really is about solid treatment planning and what each student needs. The first appointment is a triage appointment. We don't automatically say you get who you get, whoever has that opening, and that's your counselor. That first appointment allows for fast, quick entry into the counseling center. Oftentimes it's the same day appointment, next day. Very rarely do we start going out more than 2 to 3 days. And we get to know in that very quick appointment, what is it that a student needs? What is it that they like to work on? Is all that they needed was that one session? Or, you know, if someone is going to come back, who might be a really nice fit for that student to work with? So we get to learn in that first appointment if someone feels as though they'd be more comfortable with a BIPOC counselor, with a counselor who can speak Spanish while in session, with a counselor who's closer to their age. We never know what someone's going to bring up. And what we see our goal is to make what may sometimes for some of our students have counseling feel very uncomfortable, especially if it's not something they'd ever tried before, and try to lower that stress level for those ongoing appointments. Because we work that way, who you then get assigned to is your counselor. And we know that treatment tends to do best when there is a solid relationship between counselor and person in counseling. So We don't do an urgent care model where you call every day to get in that day, and whoever you get could be someone different the next week. We do have a psychiatrist on staff, and she's with us about 14 hours a week, which is a wonderful resource for students who are accessing counseling center resources if they are in need of any kind of medication consultation. If that is considered to be a part of their care, that might be really important to assess. But I should add, though, that your student does not have to have a diagnosis to access counseling center resources. Some students come in and they've already been in counseling and recognize that that's something that they need to continue because they've been coping with a mental health concern or a mental health diagnosis. But absolutely, uh-oh, I froze. Oh no. Am I still frozen for you all?
Just your head. We can hear you.
I can see my head. That was not flattering either. Sorry. Did I say as much around, did you get to hear psychiatry and not have a diagnosis?
We heard everything you said. Your voice never cut out.
Ever. Okay, thank you. Goodness. Sorry about that, everyone. So anyway, what I was saying is you don't have to have a diagnosis in order to access our services, and there are no separate fees from what you may have already paid in a health fee. We don't bill insurance. If a student were to use psychiatric services, use your own insurance off campus at a pharmacy as you would if you went to the health center and got a prescription for, you know, an antibiotic for something. So that's its own separate deal. After hours, when we are closed, we are still open. If you were to call our counseling center phone number, and if something is urgent and a student needs some after hours mental health support, they just have to listen to the prompts, press 2 when told to do so, and then you can connect with an after hours crisis clinician, which is a wonderful service. When the pandemic hit in 2020, when so many institutions were cutting resources, Providence College expanded them. And that's actually when we started to move into the ability to have this extra after hours support care in that process, because we saw that there was going to be an increase in the need for support. And that's something that we're also proud of being able to say about PC, about student affairs. We also in the counseling center will consult with students on class projects. We do programs and outreach in the community. Many of us are on committees, so we interface with students in lots of different ways, not just clinically. So we're able to have such a multifaceted role in the work that we do here in the counseling center. So I'm going to pause there and start turning into our Q&A portion of our evening, and encourage any of you who have any questions for our panel to please feel welcome to put those into the Q&A. But to start, the first question that we have is for Dean Gaffney. I am concerned about my students' mental health since they went away to school. They are outreaching us less, but talking about feeling isolated at PC and feeling anxious, sometimes not getting to class consistently. What can I do?
That's a great question. Call us. So, you know, I think probably one of the hardest things about parenting a student in college is being physically removed from them and recognizing that they are going to encounter difficulties and challenges that someone else is going to have to support them through. And so we have a great network of resources and support at Providence. It can be kind of overwhelming to, you know, really kind of figure out who's best to help your student. In a situation like that, what I hear is there's some anxiety, there's some transition issues, potentially some academic recovery that needs to happen. And it can be kind of a lot to figure out where to go to get help. And so one of the ways in which we really operate out of the Dean of Students office is primarily just to connect students who need help to the resources and support that can help them. We often hear from parents or faculty or staff or even other students about students they have concerns about. And we really like to meet your student, to get to know your student, to begin to try to understand what their situation is and particular needs are, and then make direct connections to the support resources in the community. So, the people on this panel, we work very closely with them all. I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't connect a student to someone in Brian's office for academic recovery, for tutoring, for writing center help, for academic planning. There's students who part of, the transition also maybe presents with conflict between roommates, or, as we talk to them and try to get a sense of their anxiety and what are they stressed about, what are the barriers to their success and wellness, we find that, maybe they need some assistance in residence life to help mediate or work through conflict. I think residence life has some really great skills. They teach students great communication skills, conflict resolution skills. But that sometimes those things are also bigger than the student's skill set. And so, they've got great staff who will walk through that with students. And so we're also constantly connecting students to residence life. The counseling center, have them on speed dial. The way we sometimes recognize that students, they might not know what they need. They might not be ready to say they need help. But even if they are ready to say, yes, I need help, and even if they know they need it, it's sometimes really hard to actually go out and get it. And so another one of the things we do in the Dean of Students office is we will work with students to help make the first counseling appointment. Sometimes it's easier for students to show up when and where they're told to than to pick up the phone and make that first appointment. And so, we really try to support students in a way that enables them and empowers them to connect with and utilize the resources on campus. It can be hard, right? I mean, transition to college, we expect there to be speed bumps. We expect there to be some challenges and difficulties, but sometimes, those expected challenges seem actually bigger than we thought. And so I always encourage parents, your student best. And if you feel, if your sense is that this problem you're talking them through, this situation or concern that they're kind of talking to you about sounds like is bigger than their ability to deal with, please let us know. Let us help. We can talk through, we field phone calls all the time from parents where the parent says, I don't really know what she needs. I don't really know what I should do. I'm not really even sure. She'd be furious if she knew I called. But we're happy to also be a resource to you to kind of talk through what's going on and how might you best support your student. And we'll be upfront and let you know if we think that we need to really intervene and provide support. But we're partners. We need to be partners in supporting your students. So, I just think if when in doubt, call the Dean of Students office. We also, so I co-chair the care team, and so this team of people certainly on this panel, and so we can access a much higher level of support and resource, but only if we know that there's a concern. So, anytime you have a concern, certainly in response to that question, if there's anxiety or you're worried about your student going to class, if they're really pulling away from you and you're not sure what that means, give us a call.
Brian, did you want to add? Thank you, Tiffany. Did you want to add to what Tiffany had responded with?
Just very quickly, one part of that question that stuck out for me was the missing class. And when students miss classes, it can start to create a divide, even if it's a psychological one, between the student and the faculty member. And sometimes it's a divide that students have a difficult time crossing back over. Right, going back to class, summoning up the strength to do that after they've been missing for a little while. That's something that, I mean, any one of us can help with, but certainly the Student Success Center can help with, whether it's in the form of kind of like a one-on-one, like mock conversation. You know, how are you going to approach this professor and explain your absence? Or maybe we kind of mediate on behalf of the student and just say, you know, without providing any specifics, you know, the student's been struggling, so maybe struggling, take that first step to come back to your class. You know, we're hoping you'll welcome the student back. And I think students will be really surprised by just how welcoming those faculty can be and how supportive they can be, because they don't know what they don't know. And they can't provide extra support for students who it would seem are just disappearing. And don't really necessarily care about reconnecting. So I think, you know, taking that first step is really important, and then letting the faculty know to the extent that you're comfortable that you might be struggling is just another way to get support from other people on campus.
Thanks so much, Brian. And you actually made me think of another piece that would be really important to let your students know. If you were just trying to help them navigate some of these resources, didn't necessarily feel like it was at the point where you were ready to call to see if there could be an outreach within the care team context. It's that you're talking to a bunch of us who are on a panel where our offices are really busy, and our offices are really busy because students are accessing us. And so your student may feel as though, like, I'm going to be that one person who's going to the Student Success Center for some academic coaching. Well, no, actually, they're super busy over there in a really good way. Or, you know, no one goes to counseling. We saw 20% of the undergraduate community for a clinical service in the counseling center last year. You know, gosh, no one goes to the dean's office when they're trying to map their way through college. Tiffany was quite busy today. I know that for a fact. We had a lot to talk about. And my goodness, do our hall directors on call and the rest of the staff, including from RAs up to Ned's position in Res Life, are consistently, happily connecting with students who may want to share just like something's really great that's going on in their life, but also the, oh my gosh, I need some assistance, or I'm afraid to show that I need assistance, but I'm having this conversation with you and hoping you're going to ask the right questions so I can tell you that something's going on. So let's move on to our next question. Ned, this is one I think that would be great for your area. I just spoke with my student on the phone, and it is after hours. I am concerned about how my student sounded on the phone in that moment. What do I do?
Yes, great question. Thank you for that question, Dr. Mugan. So, you know, as you've been gathering and understanding from us, you know, we enjoy a great many partnerships across campus in supporting your students. And for us in Residence Life, one of those major partnerships with public safety. So oftentimes we'll get calls like this, you know, from concerned parents about their students, you know, relate to us from public safety. And, you know, like Tiffany said, contact us, right? All roads lead to Res Life in many ways, you know, so we're oftentimes getting calls from parents referred to us, you know, oftentimes from public safety, especially after hours. And so what would happen is that if you were to call public safety, they would connect you immediately to our conflicts director on call, right? And our staff would then seek to understand what's going on, you know, what concerns you have for your student, any context that would be helpful for us to understand about what the current phenomenon is, right? Is there any history that that would be helpful for us to know? Why might your student be behaving this way? You know, the trying to get to the origin of your concerns. And, you know, chances are we might already know or have an idea of what might be going on with your student. You know, our staff is, if nothing else, trained to be observant, you know, in the halls. And so they're very observant and trained to, you know, to mediate, de-escalate, report, you know, share information up to their supervisors when they observe students who may be, you know, a little off, or maybe, you know, demonstrating signs or symptoms of, you know, subtle signs of distress, right? We're there to respond. And so, yeah, once you're connected to our conflicts director, you know, they'll again seek to understand the information, what's going on with your student, and then respond accordingly. right? Sometimes we might assess that an immediate response that evening, may not be required, and sometimes it is, right? And so we'll do our best to work with you as partners, right, in supporting your student and ensuring that we're able to connect with them as we're able, as is appropriate, to get them the support that they need. Yeah. But don't ever, there's nothing too small. Don't ever hesitate to make that call, to reach out to us, right? You know your students best, right? You know them. Our mission is to connect with them, to connect them to, right, resources and folks across campus, but you know them best, right? And so don't ever feel afraid to contact us, to share with us any concerns you might be having. We're ready for it. We're here for it. And we welcome it.
Thank you, Ned. And, in that context of knowing your student best also includes, if something is just not like them and it's making your radar up as well. We do consider parents as the experts in their children's lives, and as well as the student, to the extent that if they're feeling as though they can reach out for help and be able to express, but sometimes they're concerned about being able to do that. So we do encourage you, if something just doesn't quite feel right, or this is just not how you've experienced your student in the past, to listen to that feeling and reach out to us, and we'll be happy to see how we can come up with the next few steps in that scenario. All right, so our next question, I believe, would be heading into Brian's area. What do I do if a class in particular is causing my students significant stress?
Good question. Send the student our way. Send the student to the Success Center. And I would say more specifically, if you don't have a strong sense of exactly what about that class is causing stress, to refer that student to our academic skills unit. And here's why, and I think I can explain by way of a story. This was many years ago. I was actually working with a student at PC who was just struggling in art history. All of his exams were identification. So basically he was given a picture of a piece of art, and he had to write down the artist, the period, and the reasons why he was able to identify that piece as belonging to that period. And so the first exam did not go well, and he came in looking for help. And I just said, how are you studying for this test? He said, well, I just flipped kind of back through the textbook chapters. Now that had gotten him by in high school. It wasn't going to work in college. So I just looked at him and I said, have you tried flashcards? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, photocopy the page, cut the piece of artwork out, tape that to one side of the card, and on the back, write the name of the artist, period, and the reasons why you think it belongs to that period. So he said, that seems like a good idea. So he actually did that, and he took his second exam and he did get an A. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. What I'm saying is that sometimes it's not just the complexity of the material. Now, if you send a student to me for help with math, I'm sending that student to a math tutor, right? Sometimes it's the complexity of the material, but sometimes it's the way that they're approaching the material. They may not know different strategies for approaching different types of subject matter. So that's why I think the academic skills area is a good place to begin. The people in that area are really well equipped to kind of make that diagnosis, whether it's the material itself or it's the approach that the student is taking to the material.
Great, thank you so much, Brian. So the next question is more directed toward the counseling center area. My student has taken psychiatric medications in the past. If they need to restart, what is the process to do so at Providence College if my student isn't seeing a provider at home anymore? So actually that is often a question that will come up for students as they get to campus, and maybe they've been on campus for a month or so and start to realize that some of the experiences they had and worked through in high school seem to be creeping back up again, and perhaps had psychiatric medicines as part of the treatment at the time. So the first step when it comes to on campus is to make one of those triage appointments that I had referred to earlier on in the counseling center. And we do have a triage clinician that tends to manage almost all of them, although all of the counselors in our counseling center will do some triage and consultation to assist in that process and make sure that we're still getting students in a very timely fashion. And in that appointment, chances are that there's some goals that likely will be around counseling. And research shows that counseling with medication tends to make medication treatment more effective. And so that's how we work with our psychiatrist in our space, is that a student has to be in ongoing counseling services in order to then initiate treatment with Dr. Nato if the student is going to be getting prescriptions from her. We don't have the ability to have everyone who may be seeing someone at home, perhaps they're licensed in Rhode Island and are doing telehealth. You have to be seeing one of the counselors within the counseling center, but it also tends to allow for really solid care because we have such great communication with Dr. Nato since she's right in our space. So it makes for some great consultation opportunities for us around our students' care. So you have to get to your assigned counselor, and then that counselor will then get you to Dr. Nato, which is still such a faster pace than if you were to be looking for a psychiatrist in the community. They're booking a good 6 or more weeks out at this point, and some just saying that they're not taking anyone new and aren't giving you wait list time. So let's see our next question. Ned, I believe this is a great area for a great question for res life in your area. How do you mediate roommate conflicts that cause significant stress for students?
Yes, great question. Believe it or not, this happens. And so, like Tiffany had mentioned earlier, we train our staff on strategies around de-escalation and mediation, right? Staff being RAs, complex directors, right? And we understand conflict that arises between our students to be an expression of unmet needs, right? That's where we begin, right? This conflict is happening. We understand it to be an expression of unmet needs. So what needs do the folks in the conflict, the roommates in the conflict have that are not being met? And how might we begin the conversation from there after being seen, heard, right, for those needs that they're expressing, and trying to understand how we might be able to meet those needs, right? One great way we do that is through a roommate agreement, right? And so we try to do this proactively. So this first month of school, we spent time working through a roommate agreement with every room, right? And what this does is allows our students to engage in thinking about how they use their space and how they share the room space together, right, with one another. Questions like sleeping habits, studying habits, when folks like to go to bed, how and when folks might be allowed to spend time in the room. These are guests, these are other students that live in this space, right? But getting to what it means to share in a space and arriving at understanding what that means for one another in that space, right? And so they draw up this agreement, and that agreement helps to frame their engagement in that space. Sometimes conflict arises after that agreement is set, right? And so what typically we would do then is we would revisit the agreement, what's not working. Maybe new needs have emerged since the last time the agreement was drawn up. So we'll have a conversation there and again, seek to, adjust the agreement to meet the needs that have now come up. Sometimes, the agreement's it's just not effective, right? And we understand that sometimes students, are just not very compatible with one another, right, in their living space. And so we have strategies for that as well, right? And so we might, at that point, consider a room change, right? If that's something that, folks in the space might want to explore, right? And we'll work with that student to identify a space for that student that might be more compatible for them, right? They'll have the option to understand what rooms are available and meet with the students that where those open beds are, right? Engage in, you know, over a cup of coffee or something, or maybe over a meal, but just get to meet one another and see how they might envision living together, if there's a compatible fit there. Sometimes our staff will help facilitate those conversations, those connections, right, for our students. But our objective ultimately is to ensure that our students, as best as we're able, are able to find a compatible living space, right? Because we understand that where folks live can be a great source of both comfort and, you know, stress. We get that, right? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ned. And sometimes it will end up being part of the process, whereas life takes such good care and tunes into the process for all parties that sometimes they are making referrals out of those mediation meetings to the counseling center, to other areas on campus, especially as components of someone's narrative may pop up in the midst of that, or somebody pulls the hall director or the RA aside after the conversation to say, I can't say this in this mediation meeting right now because I don't want my roommate to know about a piece of my life I'm not ready to share with them, but I'm struggling with, and they may, you know, fill in the blanks from there. So there's another area of a touch point that we have so many of on our campus that allows us to really connect students to where they need to go within our on-campus service system. All right. So an area that we haven't touched too much upon in our panel yet today, but I do think, Tiffany, when we think about the care team in particular and the role of health services, it'd be good to bring up now with this question. My student has significant physical health concerns. I worry it's impacting their studies and their life in general on campus. How do I proceed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think sometimes, you know, certainly there are students who come to campus with pre-existing health conditions that, you know, over the course of their lives, you know, whether it was, you know, high school, so relatively recent, or lifelong sort of conditions, that they have, you know, found ways to navigate, but college is an entirely new environment. And so, you know, there may be some planning that needs to happen. Or we have students who come to college and, you know, at some point during their time at Providence may experience some significant health issues, short-term, long-term. And there's a you know, a few ways in which that can impact and disrupt their experience. You know, especially if it's a new sort of health situation, you know, that can be scary. There can be a lot of sort of anxiety and unease that goes along with what does this mean for them and how they experience the campus. And, you know, one of our, I think really another strength at Providence beyond our counseling services and the way we care for students who, you know, experience mental health concerns, is our student health center and the support that we provide to students when there are physical health, medical situations that they're navigating. You know, we certainly do provide academic and non-academic accommodations for students, whether they have, again, long-term pre-existing conditions, or whether it's, you know, new diagnoses or something that is short-term. Like I spoke to a unfortunate young man today who broke his kneecap in a rugby game. And so he, you know, he's got some difficult physical challenges up ahead, you know, but hopefully will resolve. And so, you know, we work really well as a team with our health center staff and with the Student Success Center. And, you know, specifically accessibility services out of the Student Success Center. And so it's not unheard of for us to have essentially team meetings, usually over Zoom, with families, with students, with our director of student health, with director of accessibility services, somebody from the dean of students office. We've had staff from residence life when we think maybe navigating the residence hall, might be a challenge. And we will spend time planning and, making plans. We're really happy to do that over the summer in advance in anticipation of a student's arrival. But we're also, really good about coming together and triaging and planning when a student experiences something new. Our health services, they are HIPAA compliant, and so they're also a great resource for students who have a health sort of condition that maybe isn't so disruptive that it requires accessibility services and residence life and all of us to come together. But they have some concerns about their health and they want some privacy and conversation about that. And so our health center is a really great resource with really compassionate, warm, caring people who work there. And they're also really well integrated into our team and our community. Director of Student Health sits on the care team. And so they also can help students, if that's the first point of contact for a student with a health condition with some concerns about the way it's impacting their experience, they do a really good job of working with students and getting them to a place where they're comfortable then being referred to and accessing additional supports. What's really important is so just using, for all of families to know and students to know, but especially when there is something, a health condition that is sudden, new, or maybe it's not, but all of a sudden, flares up and becomes really sort of disruptive, to give us a call and let us know. So, what we want is a student to be able to focus on their health and well-being, and we want the family to be able to focus on their health and well-being. And so if you let us know, we can not only advise you on options and how we can best support, but then we can kind of shoulder the burden of some of the work that needs to be done on behalf of the student and the family. So, that means like I today reached out to a member of Brian's staff to share that we had a student with, this significant injury who was going to be absent from class due to, needing to seek appropriate healthcare. And so his staff then notifies the faculty. That student doesn't need the stress of potentially being in the emergency department, being in the hospital, waiting for surgery, to also be emailing professors about missing classes or missed assignments due. We also had, today I contacted our transportation office and public safety office, because when that student returns to campus, he's going to have some difficulty navigating the campus to get from one class to another. And so what resources and support do we have to provide to him? And that's something that I'm happy to do so that he's not sitting with that stress again, as he needs to focus on his health. But the student's health can really impact and be disruptive in other ways that are maybe a little more subtle. But I would say, I don't know if it's equally as problematic, that poor kid with the broken knee, but they can lose sleep. And if they're not sleeping because of, something with their health, then that can exacerbate it. If they, whatever the health condition is, if it makes it difficult for them to eat and get adequate nutrition, it certainly can be, maybe it's something else in the residence hall that they don't want other students to be aware of. And so there's some sort of embarrassment or something they're navigating. And so, we also can just provide the kind of support, and again, as appropriate, referral and resource and connection to counseling and other support resources to help the student really kind of be able to accept what's going on and accept help in the appropriate way, and try to minimize the ripple impact of a health condition. So hopefully that answers the question, but we really, I think as a community, show up really well for students who have physical health and medical issues that come up as well.
Great, thanks so much, Tiffany. We have a question coming in for Ned, your area in Res Life. If my student has a roommate conflict and needs to find a new roommate, is there a compatibility form that covers preferences, habits, likes and dislikes, as opposed to needing to interview people.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the question. So I think there's a multi-part answer to this. In the first, we don't have a compatibility form. So we don't have a form per se, but we do have a Kevin Hillary. And Kevin Hillary is he's one of our associate directors, and he works so closely with our students in their assignments. And he is magic in terms of how he's able to work with our students to identify the right open spaces for them to start off right in their journey of finding a new space to live in. And so I really want to shout out Kevin Hillary for his work, relentlessly empathic work in connecting our students to the right living spaces. The next thing I'll say is we are actually working on, it's not still in development, but we are working on a process by which we would have such a form for rooms that have vacant spaces, right? And so the idea is to have students that have empty beds in their spaces complete such a form so that we can have that data available for students looking to move into a space. Because I agree with you, it's a great question. It certainly would serve the student well to have something like that going into a conversation, in pursuit of a new living space. So it is something we're working on. We don't have it quite ready yet, but it's in development. Great question.
Great, thank you so much. I think we have time for one final question, which can actually be answered by all of us essentially in different ways because of our areas on this panel. My student is a first-generation college student and comments that everyone around them seems to know what they're doing and they feel lost socially and academically. Where can I direct my student? So maybe we can start, Tiffany, with you, and then there's pieces that Brian can pick up. We all could.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and so we actually have a couple of really great programs that I think if we had a student or a family that disclosed to us that their student was in that situation and really kind of concerned and feeling maybe like they're not quite part of the community because of this experience they're having, we would try to connect them to a couple of things. We have a group of faculty and staff, so employees at the college who were also first generation, and they have identified themselves to the college as being available to serve as sort of mentors, and that they're really kind of eager and excited to get connected to students who also are first generation, and really an acknowledgement of that shared experience, the kind of guidance and support that they can offer as having been someone who navigated college and a campus environment, coming from a similar sort of situation. And so, we've got some really enthusiastic staff who, we call the program PC1G. And so that would definitely be a resource we would connect students, but we also have really great student peer mentorship programs where, depending on the class year, so for first year students, there's a retreat that usually happens in the fall semester to sort of kick off that program. And then first year, first generation students are assigned upperclassmen first generation student mentors. And throughout the year, there are, I think, one-on-one, certainly, they have coffee together, they have lunch together, they meet, they talk about, course registration, what's that going to look like? And so they develop, I think, a really great individual relationship, but then the entire group comes back together probably about on a monthly basis. And they participate in social events or professional development events, academic skill building events, career education. The Chirico Career Center loves to facilitate workshops targeted at our first generation peer mentor program students. And there's a lot of, I think, effort really put into helping ease the students' transition to the campus environment, but then to also really help really formalize the connections and resources on campus. So those are two really great programs that I think I would start with.
Thank you, Tiffany. Brian, did you want to share anything around the academic piece?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if it looks like everyone else knows what they're doing, they don't. I can tell you that for certain. You know, a lot of students are struggling with the same types of adjustment issues. Maybe they're better at hiding it than others. And so, you know, if they're good at hiding it, the perception may be that I'm the only one who's really struggling. But, you know, if you don't believe me, then what I would say is come up to the Student Success Center some weekday afternoon in between your classes, and you don't even have to come inside the facility. We're kind of on the perimeter of the building. So you can actually walk around and observe because all the walls are glass. Just look at the number of students getting tutoring in the tutoring center. Just look at the number of students in the writing center. Look at the number of staff who are in their offices engaged with students, and then walk away and tell me that you're the only one that might need some help. I'm not saying that solves the problem, but I think that sometimes seeing that you're not alone can be empowering and can really encourage you to take those first steps you need to take to get help. So come up and look around. And if you feel confident enough about it and you see me walking around and you'd like a little tour, be happy to show you around, show you where all the services are, and get you connected with the person or the people that you need to be speaking with.
Thanks so much, Brian. And on the counseling center, and any of us are so happy to be able to work with students as they're transitioning and adjusting to their experiences here at PC. Sometimes we'll have students in that initial triage appointment requesting a counselor who was first gen themselves too, and there are a handful of us that are. And sometimes that's really what feels like the nice fit for a first generation college student. So we try to make that work as well. Well, it looks like we have come up on the end of our time for our panel, and we're so happy that you were able to join us this evening, or if you're watching this in the recording, we hope that we were able to answer some questions that perhaps you've been experiencing with your student. Thank you so much for trusting us with the care of your students that you have sent to Providence College, and go Friars.
Good night, all.